Okay, hi guys, how are you doing? Um, this is not going to be a formal lecture, this is not the lecture I usually do in class, but I just really felt like talking about a couple of things which are very current right now and I hear it all the time, and I thought that perhaps they require some sort of clarification. In particular, when I talk about socialism and capitalism, because these words are constantly used by so many people who don't seem to understand exactly what do they mean. In particular, I do want to talk about them the way Marx looks at them, because again, we hear it all the time that all those Marxists, they want socialism, and people don't really understand what did Marx mean when he was talking about capitalism, socialism, and so on. Mind you that there are different ways to interpret that. However, certain things in Marx are really clear, and I think everybody needs to understand them. I will give you my own interpretation based on the reading of Marx and based on how I understand Marx, and I'm sure many people will agree with me and some people may disagree with me. Nonetheless, this is all based on his writings. Unfortunately, he is not with us today to explain it himself. He died way more than 100 years ago, and we only have his writings to lay back to. He died. So, first of all, let's look at capitalism. What did he mean by the capitalism? Well, of course he meant the system we have today, and he meant the system they had back in the 19th century. These systems are significantly different, yet they have some similarity. And what is one distinguishing characteristic Marx actually picked on when he was talking about capitalism? And this characteristic is division of labor. Note that prior to the invention of machines, prior to the invention of factory production, there was no division of labor, at least not in the same sense. Most people were artisans. They would produce their product from beginning to end. For example, a shoemaker would make shoes. He will get materials, he will put them together, he was a designer, he was also a creator of this product, and in the end of the day he also sold this product. The entire process belonged to him. Now what happened with invention of the machines? The process started breaking up into elements. These elements no longer require special skill. Almost anybody can do them, except that they are very mechanical and very simplistic. We have another thing happening, is that large-scale production starts to come into the scene, and large-scale production requires multiple workers who do all these little parts. One worker does one little thing. He takes something, he puts it in a different spot. That's all he does, all day, from beginning to end. That is his job. He's getting wages for this job, which are just paid on an hourly basis. At the beginning, those were really, really bad wages. They would barely allow workers to survive. Of course, later on, it grew, and today, at least skilled workers make a relatively decent wages, but the idea is still the same. And the idea is you go to the factory to sell your labor. You are selling your labor to the person or people who own the factory. And essentially, you hate your job. This is for the most part true. Most people who work in factories, in this kind of mass production, they hate their job. What is going on? Why do they hate their job so much? Well, because they no longer create the product the way artisans did it back in medieval days. they don't create the shoes from scratch. They only do this all day. Again, and again, and again. They don't see their product. The product is produced without them. It is sold without them. It goes somewhere without them. Now, Marx talks about alienation. What is alienation? This is a characteristic trait of capitalism, according to Marx. And what exactly happens here is that you do not enjoy what you do, but you enjoy the money which you get as a result of that. You waste your day. Essentially, you waste your day. You waste the entire day doing something you truly hate in order to get paid. And only this money, which you get in the end of this whole story, is something which you enjoy. But do you really enjoy them? Remember, as a human being, you are what you do. Your work is your life. The money you get at the end of it is not your life. So what happens is you spend this money on some mindless entertainment, trying to forget about what you do during the day. You can't wait for the end of the day. Oh my God, what time am I going to be finished? And then eventually when you are finished, you're like, thank God, I'm finally free. But next morning you have to come back again and do it again and again and again. Now this is the tragedy. Money creates alienation in themselves because money essentially is nothing, right? It is some sort of a cloud, something which you strive towards, but you can never quite get it. You get a little bit and then it immediately dissolves. So, just like this magic flute playing, and you're marching towards something which you don't even know what your entire life. This is what happens with capitalism, with division of labor, and with alienation. Now, what Marx is saying is that obviously that is not ideal way to spend our life. But here's where complexities begin. What is socialism? Again, there were many different philosophers, different writers who were trying to talk about socialism before Marx. Saint-Simon in France, a number of other people, they all had their own ideas about socialism. We'll talk about Marxist idea of socialism. To Marx, socialism is just a stage. It's a stage which leads us towards communism. Now, note that Marx never quite explains either one of these terms in great detail. Engels, his friend and co-worker, was describing socialism in some of his writings, but again, it's hard to truly understand what is going on there. Mainly we can get this idea. Socialism precedes communism, and socialism starts when workers control the means of production. Controlled by workers. Workers. This is an essential point. And you will be shocked when you think about it and ask yourself, was there ever socialism? Is there socialism anywhere in this world? Now, I actually happen to be born in the Soviet Union. I happen to grow up under the system which was called socialism, and today almost anybody who talks about this socialism goes back to the Soviet Union, Eastern Europe, and talks about the countries in Eastern Europe which of course adopted Marxism and were trying to strive for the communism through socialism. Now, the million-dollar question is, did they ever have socialism? What is socialism? No, there's a simple answer. If we want to know, Let's look at Marx's definition. Did workers ever control the means of production? What is the answer to this? Many people will say yes, the workers did control the means of production in socialist states. Did they? What does it mean to control something? Ask yourself this question. When you drive a car, what does it mean you control the car? Well, it's rather simple, isn't it? You can turn left, you can turn right, you can stop, you can keep on going. That's what it means. Did workers really have control over the means of production? Did they decide who will run the factory? Not really. Did they determine their own wages? No. Could they decide what to produce? Who decided all these things? Bureaucrats. Party nomenclature. They were saying that they are doing it for the workers in their best interest. In fact, they were even saying they are workers themselves. Why? Well, perhaps they have worked at the factory for maybe a year or two when they were young. Does this make you a worker? This is an interesting question. If you spend 2 years at a factory and 30 years working in an office as a bureaucrat, are you still a worker? Well, I don't think so. In fact, again, if you look at Marx, what makes you a worker and how it's different from other classes is that your interests are joined with other workers and those interests are common, right? Well, what were the interests of the bureaucrats? Can we compare them to the interests of the worker? For example, did the bureaucrat ever care how much worker is making? Or how long is he working? Or what conditions he is working? Well, in some sense, I guess he didn't want the worker to rebel and start another revolution. But at the same time, suppose he makes worker work twice as hard for the same amount of money. Do you think the bureaucrat would lose his sleep? Do you think he will wake up in the middle of the night and say, "Oh my God, the workers are suffering"? Of course not. All he cares about is his position, his salary, and his work, which happened to be in the office. So bureaucrats actually controlled the system in the Soviet Union and in other socialist countries pretty much from the beginning. Many of them came from the workers, not all of them by any means. Lenin was never a worker. Neither was Stalin. They didn't work a day in their lives. Many other party functionaries never worked in any capacity. They didn't even hold a hammer in their hands. Or if they did, that would have been by some accident. Many other people were workers at some point, previous to the revolution. Then they stopped being workers. They actually realized, hey, there's a pretty good living to be made from not being a worker, from actually becoming a bureaucrat and telling workers what to do. So was it ever a socialism? I would say no, it was never a socialism. And that's why it collapsed. In fact, it was state capitalism. Because what is capitalism? Let's go back here. Division of labor. Was there ever division of labor in the socialist states? Socialist states? Of course. Were there factories? You bet. Where people go there and work 8 hours a day doing this? Absolutely. Were they paid wages? Of course. That's how they were paid. So wait a minute here. That was capitalism. The only difference is who controlled the means of production. Well, here, capitalists control the means of production. The wealthy people, the bourgeoisie. Here, bureaucrats control them. And therefore, this is state capitalism. The state controls the means of production, the bureaucrat state. What's the catch? Why? Why did we never have socialism? Okay, if you like this lecture, I'm going to have to come back to it next time because I don't want to make it too long. Next time we'll talk more about what did Marx say. What did he mean? When is revolution going to come? When are we going to get to communism? What is going on? Next time. For now, that'll be all.